Welcome, everyone. I hope you're having a good day at home today. Today, you guys are going to be working on what's called something about the midpoint, okay? You might be able to guess what this means, all right? But we're actually going to give a formal definition here for what a midpoint is. The midpoint of a segment is the point. All right, that's obvious. The midpoint is a point. It's this point that splits the segment It's the point that splits the segment into two congruent parts. Okay? So think about what congruent means. Congruent means the same, right? We talked about that last week. So the way that we show that this is the midpoint is that we want to show that both of these sides are congruent. If you remember, to show that two things are congruent, you draw that little line through it, all right? So now we know that from A to M, that line segment is congruent to the line segment from M to B. All right, and that's the definition of a midpoint. It lies exactly in the middle, so therefore there's equal distance on both sides, okay? So we're gonna look at an example of that. So suppose that M is the midpoint of PQ, okay? So I'm actually gonna draw this picture. So we've got P and we've got Q, and we're gonna suppose that M is the midpoint, okay? Which means both sides are the same. So we're gonna mark that on our picture. It says PM equals 6x plus 8. All right. It also tells us MQ is 4x plus 20. What is the length of PQ? So this problem's a little bit different than the length and distance ones that we did last week because we don't know anything about the whole length, okay? So we can't make an equation using our segment addition postulate. What we can do, however, is use the fact that both of these are congruent, which means their lengths are the same, and we can make an equation that way. So we're going to set both sides equal to each other. 6x plus 8 equals 4x plus 20. All right. And now we can solve this equation for x. So we subtract 4x on both sides. That gives us 2x plus 8 equals 20. Subtract 8. 2x equals 12 divided by 2. X equals 6. All right. So we got x equals 6. Now let's think about what was the question they asked, okay? They asked, what is the length of PQ? So PQ is the whole segment. So in order to figure out that length, we're going to have to plug in that x value that we just got. So I'm going to plug it in right here. All right, so we got 4 times 6 plus 20. 4 times 6, that's 24. 24 plus 20 is 44. So this distance right here is 44. Now, do I need to plug in 6 again over here? Okay, the answer is no, because since we know they're equal, we know that this also must be 44, which means PQ equals 88, right? 44 times 2, or 44 plus 24. And that will be our actual answer, okay? So that's just one type of problem that they can ask for this. Now, another thing that goes along with midpoint is what's called the midpoint formula. So the midpoint formula is used when you actually have coordinates, kind of like how we did with distance. So the midpoint formula, the midpoint formula So first of all, since it's a point, all right, the formula is a coordinate, all right, with an x value and a y value. So you need 2 points in order to do the midpoint formula. You need an x1 and an x2, all right, and you're just going to take the median or the mean of both of those points, all right? Hold on. Someone's mowing the lawn. Anyway, so you're going to take the mean of both those points, which means you're going to add them up and divide by 2, and you're going to do the same thing for the y's. And what you get is a new point that will be the midpoint of the 2 points that you have. So we're going to do an example here. It says find the midpoint between the points -1, 8 and 6, 14. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come through. That's loud. I'm going to come through and I'm going to label this, okay? So we've got x1, y1, and we've got x2, y2. And all we're going to do is we're going to use this formula above. So the midpoint is going to be equal to, so we want to do x1 plus x2, that's -1 plus 6 divided by 2. And then y1 plus y2, that's 8 plus 14. All right, and now we just want to figure out what are those numbers. So -1 plus 6, that's 5, so this is 5 over 2. 8 plus 14, that is 22. So this is a good example because one of these is odd and one is even. So if it's odd, when you divide by 2, that's going to give you a decimal, but if it's even, you can just divide it. So 22 divided by 2 is 11. All right, so our final answer, our midpoint, is at 2.5, 11. And that's really all there is to this, okay? It's nothing too complicated, so it's definitely not as hard as distance. So last example that we're going to do says, suppose x is the midpoint of PL. So once again, we're going to draw a picture, all right? You should always draw a picture in geometry. X is the midpoint. It says find the coordinates of point L if x is 2, -4. And P is 6, -8. So this problem is a little bit different than the one we just did, because now we actually have the midpoint, right? We have the midpoint, and we don't have one of the endpoints. So how does that change what we do? Okay, well, we're still going to use our midpoint formula. This is going to be x1. This is going to be y1. The only difference is we don't know x2 or y2. So this is a little bit harder. You're going to have to do a little bit of solving here, because what essentially you have is 2 equations, okay? We know the answer, right? We know that 6, because 6 is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, we know that's going to equal 2, right? Because that's the x coordinate of the midpoint. We also know that -8 plus y2 over 2 is going to equal -4, okay? Because that's the y point, or the y coordinate of our midpoint. So you're kind of working backwards, and you kind of have these 2 equations that you need to solve. So I'm actually going to move this up here. All right, and so we're going to solve this, and it's not too bad to solve. All right, it's 2 steps. The first step is we're going to multiply by 2 in order to cancel this out. So that gives us 6 plus x2 equals 4. Then you're going to subtract 6, and you get x2 equals -2. So there's our x coordinate. We're going to do the same thing over here, all right? We're going to multiply by 2. we've got negative 8 plus y2 equals negative 8. Now we're going to add 8 on both sides. And we actually get y2 equals 0, which is interesting. And so now we know that L is at negative 2, comma 0. All right, and that'd be our answer. That's the coordinates. Why did I write this up here, by the way? That was totally wrong. All right, that's the coordinates of L. So that's how you would do this problem, all right? Now you could try and figure it out, right? You could say, okay, well, 6 and 2, that's down by 4. So if I went down by 4 again, I would make it to negative 2. And you could say negative 8 to negative 4, that's up by 4. And if I went up by 4 again, that gets me to 0, right? But that's if you really know what's going on. But if you're unsure, solving it like this will always give you the correct answer as long as you solved correctly. So hopefully you guys can use this to complete the practice. If you have any questions about this, you can always email me or Canvas message me, or just wait and ask them tomorrow when you guys are in class. So if you have any questions, again, you can do either of those two things, and have a great day.